All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. And this is a quick little video. I'm sitting in front of my wife's 2014 Jeep Patriot. I'll start back at the beginning on Saturday morning, about 5 a.m. My wife was going on a vacation trip with her girlfriends, meeting at one of their friends' house at 5 a.m. So she loaded up her car, this one, and so I drove her to the meeting point. And on the way, I was having trouble navigating. Now, a couple of these roads I hadn't been on before, or maybe once in the past. And I was familiar with them, but not in the dark. My wife's headlights were dim. And I mean really, really dim. And even on the head bright, they were still dim. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with this? What's going on? I thought maybe, maybe she had a headlight out, or maybe the voltage on the alternator was dropping off or something, because they were just so damn dim. And I was worried for my safety. I couldn't see the edge of the road very well. Well, anyway, long story short, I got it home and I got out and I thought, I've got to check these lights, make sure they're both burning. They were both burning, but the light wasn't leaving the headlight. These headlights had UV damage, and they were white. They were almost opaque. With the headlights on, it lit up, but it didn't. The headlight beam was diffused, massively diffused, and I don't know how my wife ever drove at night in that way. Now, I knew this was a problem on these headlights, and a month or two back, I started to take a look at it. But I'd purchased some products that were only for very light UV damage. Nothing like what these headlights had. So anyway, I'll tell you, now there's a YouTube video, I'll link it. I can't remember off the top of my name, but I've watched this fellow. And there's no shortage of videos about how to restore UV damaged headlights. But my wife's were one of the most extreme examples of UV damage I've ever seen. So in this, I'll link the video somewhere here of the fellow whose video I followed. Now, of course, his method began with wet sanding, and that's fine. I'm familiar with wet sanding. However, I didn't have any wet sandpaper. I ended up finding the appropriate package of sandpaper, wet sandpaper, on Amazon, and these are third sheets. They'll fit on a sanding block. And I didn't want to buy a damn pack of 100, 1,000 grit 8.5 by 11 sheets, or 150, 1,500 grit, or whatever. I wanted a few of each. So I started out, and this packet was perfect because it started out, the lowest grit was 1,000. So, and it's got 5 or 6 sheets of 1,000 grit. Now, if you're going to do every headlight in your community, you'll probably run out. But this was the perfect pack. It was, I don't know, it was under $10. And it had a variety. It had 1,000, 1,500 grit, 2,000 grit, and 3,000 grit. And I used them all. Now, the damage was so severe that it felt like sandpaper. And when I started with 1,000 grit, it sounded like I was rubbing two sheets of 80 grit together. It was awful. The damage was so severe, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to bring them back to useful status. So I spent a lot of time with 1,000 grit on both headlights. A lot of time. And then I would wipe it dry and see what it looked like. And it progressively got better, more transparent. The lens did. So I went over it, and then I went to 1,500. And I spent a lot of time on wet sanding with 1,500. And so it was getting better all the time. So I went to 2,000 and spent time going over it. And you can hear your progress, really, because this surface on this headlight was so rough, you could hear the grit, the 1000 grit, and it gradually it sounded smoother when you were sanding it. 1500, same way. 2000, it began to hear the sanding less, and it was gliding more over the surface. By the time I got to 2000 grit, I sprayed off the headlight, dried it off, and it was looking really good. Still a little hazy. We interrupt this program for an important news bulletin. Flash! If you're restoring your headlights that are fogged up, you need this: a sanding block, a flexible sanding block. Don't use a rigid one. Don't even use a billy stick. You need something that will conform to the contours of your headlight housing. That'll give you the most efficient sanding you can get. Now, if you don't have one and you're working on it now and need to get it finished today, you can use your hand, but don't sand this way because your fingers will sand deeper than the areas between your fingers. If you're going to do this, keep it in a perpendicular manner compared to your finger direction, or at a 45, anything, and you'll have success. But I prefer a rubber block to conform to the curves of your headlight housing. All right, that's it for this news flash. We'll return you back to your regular programming, Little House on the Prairie. So then I went to 3000 and spent some time on each with 3000 done, and I was satisfied with how clear it was. And so the last step was polishing. Now, because the only grinder I've got, and then away we went. So I polished and polished, cleaning it periodically, cleaning it off to see where I was. It took 2 or 3 applications of polish and the buffer to get the lens nice and clear. And there's still a couple spots that I could probably continue to work on if I wanted to get it perfect. It's pretty good right now. It's only about 1,000 times better than it was as far as transmitting the light. I'd previously purchased Meguiar's headlight coating, and all this is like a clear coat. That's all it amounts to. And that's, I didn't have any clear in the shop, but I did have this that I'd purchased months ago. So, and simply you give each headlight a couple of medium wet coats, let it flash for 5 minutes in between coats, and it fully cures in 24 hours. I gave these headlights 3 medium wet coats, making sure not to apply it too heavy. I didn't want any runs. So I'm not going to turn the headlights on for any length of time until I get past that 24-hour mark. I want this coating to be nice and cured. This coating will give UV protection to each headlight surface and prevent it from, well, I don't know that it'll prevent the UV oxidation. It will slow it. Probably in another year, 18 months, I may have to do this again. However, I will do it long before lens condition gets as bad as it was this time. I was able to bring it back from the brink using these products. I will tell you the buffer was a godsend. The ability to adjust the speed, and with the pads, I would probably still be wet sanding. The buffer was a godsend. I would probably still be wet sanding with 3000 grit to this point if I didn't have that. Once you can tell when you've got it, the wet sanding is done, and when you start getting the buffer on it, then the lens clears up magically. And then once you have that done, the clear coat is the next step. Now, I've never used this before. In fact, I've never used any of these products before. But the wet sanding, of course, is the key. And if you're working on your headlights and you can't get that haze, the fog off of them, go back to 1,000 grit. Now, on one of these headlights, I was almost ready for the buffing, and it still had some hazy spots. And I decided to go back to 1,000 grit sandpaper and attack those areas and then eliminate them. And it took a little time, a little more elbow grease, but by the time I got the buffing the compound and the buffer out, it it looked great. Looks great. And so my wife's driving will be much safer, and she'll be able to see where she's going for a change. All right, I will leave links to my buffer. It was $49.95, which was quite a deal. And actually, there were a couple of models for the same price. This one came with all the accessories, and that made it a tremendous deal. I didn't have to buy any accessory for the buffer. All I had to do was provide the compound and put it together and buff away. So I can see myself using that to quite an extent. Do not waste your money on a rinky-dink buffer and think you're doing yourself any good. One where you can vary the speeds infinitely adjustable, and it's designed for buffing and coming with the accessories. That was huge. Saved me a lot of money. My wife is out of town till this weekend. When she comes home, she'll have a chance to see, she'll be able to see her new headlights and see with them. All right, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.